In a previous lecture pod, I defined Foucault's concept of technologies of the self as the practices undertaken to aid in the construction of a self. And the self is who you are as a unique individual. In this lecture pod, I want to focus on one particular technology of the self, network digital media and the practice of self-documentation specifically. We used to refer to self-documentation as blogging and microblogging, for example using Twitter and Instagram. But as I'll explain, self-documentation online involves a lot more than just publishing your thoughts and opinions. The problem I'm investigating in this lecture pod is this: what kind of self does self-documentation online enable us to create? I'm using the concept self-documentation predominantly from Janelle Langlois' book, Meaning in the Age of Social Media. Generally, this concept refers to the process of keeping a record of one's life. My sister used to self-document when she was a kid using a personal diary, which I read once and I felt guilty ever since. Anyhow, self-documentation is massively popular today, and that's thanks to blogging platforms such as WordPress, microblogging platforms such as Twitter, and also social network sites such as Facebook and LinkedIn. Self-documentation today includes many activities. Obviously, it involves the kind of reflections people post about their lives and careers in blogs. It involves the snippets of information on Twitter about what people are doing and reading. It involves the pictures on Instagram where users show what they're eating, where they are. And it involves the status updates on Facebook and LinkedIn where people tell you what they're doing too, which could involve what they're literally doing, what they're reading, watching, listening to, and thinking about. These are all forms of documenting the self. And another more recent example is the video streaming app Periscope, which allows people to stream live video of what they're doing there and then. The other day, for example, I watched someone eating dinner and another driving around the streets of LA. Riveting stuff. And we can really say that any profile you have on network digital media involves some form of self-documentation. For example, your playlists on Spotify are a form of self-documentation, of music you currently like and even of your moods. For example, I have a playlist called Amp Up for when I'm on the bench press. Okay, that's not true. Your activity on LinkedIn, where you can see all the articles you've posted, liked, commented on and shared, is a form of self-documentation where the content says as much about you as whatever it's actually about. And the same goes for your profile on Facebook and your photo albums and the stuff you like and what you say about what you like or what you don't say. And sadly, the stuff you want to forget, that you want other people to forget but you can't, is part and parcel of self-documentation too. So here's the million-dollar question, which is at the heart of this lecture pod. Considering all this self-documentation going on online and all the time people are spending doing it, time perhaps we used to spend reading novels, watching TV or movies, all of which are examples of technologies of the self, what kind of selves are we creating? If Guy Debord, writing about Society of the Spectacle in the 60s, said that the multiplicity of images proliferating everywhere in media are creating fragmented subjects unable to identify with any single sign or image, then what's the effect today of what we could call the digital society of self-documentation? Eugenia Saipira is pretty positive about the effect of self-documentation. So it's good news for all of you obsessed with posting stuff on Facebook and streaming live video of you having a nap on the couch. Saipira is writing about blogging, but as I've suggested, blogging really takes into account most online activity. Microblogging, liking and sharing music, videos, whatever. Saipira is on the same page, defining blogging according to similar characteristics. The ability of the user to shift between modes of address, for instance, to readers, family, friends. The discretion of the user, that is, they can write about whatever they want and post whatever media they want. And last, the notion that blogging, no matter what the form it takes place in the view of others. Now, as I said, Saipira argues that blogging is mostly positive, and so she's saying that it has a positive effect on the self. Ultimately, Sayapira argues that the potential of blogging lies with the way it creates autonomous subjects. Now, she doesn't mean autonomous in the sense of being separate from others, more in the sense of a kind of independence and empowerment. According to Sayapira, blogging and self-documenting involves judging, thinking and evaluating what we publish, and these actions are all crucial for the creation of autonomy. Furthermore, it's a collaborative autonomy, apparent every time we take a position on others' content and every time others take a position on ours. Sayapira writes, "In and through blogging, subjects emerge as autonomous, that is, different from others in specific ways. But this is a social kind of autonomy, as it takes place in the virtual presence of others and involves a kind of exteriorization of one's inner thoughts, ideas, experiences, and so on." So what we have here is an opinion pretty much saying that sharing your thoughts online, sharing the thoughts of others, taking a position on others' thoughts or music, video, whatever, is an enriching and positive way of making sense of the self. Through blogging and the fact that it's a technology of the self, which Sayapira says is both autonomous and social collaborative, we can achieve, quote, personal growth, understanding, exploration of ideas and events, as well as self-transcendence, or going beyond oneself and seeking to help others. Now, I am mentioning the more idealistic aspect of Sayapira's argument, and it's true, she does note things that prevent the kind of self-transcendence described above, such as problems of visibility. And she does discuss the trickier questions of race and gender online. But overall, she is positive about blogging as a technology of the self. Now I'd like to turn to another theorist who is a little more critical about social media, and that's for a reason Sayapira and many other theorists don't acknowledge or don't acknowledge in enough detail. The reason is the role of the software running social media, defining meaningfulness, and ultimately defining the self. In her 2014 book, Meaning in the Age of Social Media, Langlois defines self-documentation today, like I have, as more than simply publishing rants in WordPress and Tumblr. She writes, "The mix of entertainment and social connection, the coexistence of mass and interpersonal modes of communication, and the blurring lines between public and intimate settings, along with the reliance on automated recommendations and a for-profit logic, form the specific context for new ways of accounting for and documenting the self." She's saying that self-documentation is about entertainment and connection, and that it involves the blurring of the public and the intimate. But the point I really want to pick up on is what she identifies as automated recommendations and a for-profit logic. The entire gist of Langlois' book is that our understanding of things in social media, and this includes ourselves and others, as well as content, such as text, video, music, and image, depends significantly on what social media tells us these things mean. In other words, meaning in social media is produced by social media, by the software that makes it all happen. In this respect, she calls social media a meaning machine, and a big piece of her argument depends on what she describes as social media's grey profiling of its users. She points out how social media is constantly gathering data from its users. Social media platforms, Langlois writes, interrogate, scrutinize, and pay attention to all kinds of clues to gain some kind of understanding as to what makes a person act in a certain way. The profiles created are grey because they aren't profiles we've produced, but profiles created by the meaning machine that are an interpretation of us. What happens is that these grey profiles are used to manage all the information online on social media, and it's kind of essential given all the information online. For instance, grey profiles are used to serve up what Langlois calls automated recommendations. They're used to link us to related content, find potential new friends, and of course, the products we need and suit us best. In this way, grey profiles based on user activity and user data theoretically help us make sense of social media by telling us what things mean in terms of what they're similar to and who should be our friends, essentially giving meaning to our own self-documentation activity. In a nutshell then, Langlois is arguing that social media's algorithms determine the meaningfulness of what we do online. But more than that, and this is where Langlois' criticism of social media as a technology of the self comes in, the meaning machine that is social media hijacks our creation of self.
Just do it!
Let me explain. Langlois says that the goals of self-documenting are to work out who we are and how to be. Working out how to be is a goal about the future. But here's the problem with social media, says Langlois. With the grey profile and the automated recommendations, social media is ultimately telling us where to go next, constantly. Social media is telling us who to be friends with, what to read next, what to consume, and what to like. In other words, the machine is telling us how to be. It's offering what Langlois calls a trajectory of becoming. So, and I quote, "It's not only the user who gets to decide on his trajectory of becoming, but the meaning machine as well." The end result, as Langlois notes, is that the image of the self is not a purely cultural or existential work anymore, but one that is negotiated through informational and corporate networks. In other words, who we are online is really produced by the corporate network itself. Now, this brings us to the end of this lecture pod, but the thing is, you need to somehow test this theory out, and Saipiras from earlier in the video. Do you feel that, in line with Langlois' opinion, you're not really getting anywhere online, and you're not really getting anything out of it? It may be the case that it all feels a little sameish, or there's nothing challenging or stimulating happening. Or maybe you're frustrated about how the system feels like it's dictating who you are and what you see. Take note of these things and think about it. Or, following Saipira, do you feel social media gives you a sense of exploration, providing you with the tools and the context to try stuff out, to test ideas, feel the vibe from the crowd, and ultimately have control over how you represent yourself and what others think about you? And maybe too, you feel comfortable, like you're in a familiar and cozy old armchair. Think about it and let me know. Thanks for listening.